out the Audit and Finance Committee at the Indiana Area School District. We have an hour to get through a rather packed agenda, and as everybody knows, I'd like to move the meetings along. So something we've all been waiting for is Kimberly Dorchak to come.
I don't know about we all. I'm glad that you have that.
And we have Jared's sidekick with us. Jared, do you want to introduce your employee?
Yeah, the assistant business manager here at Indiana School District is Nicole Decker. She is here on the night of the audit because she plays a big part in getting that together. So I asked her to attend as well in case there are questions. So
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you could come.
Thank you for
and
having
Kim,
me.
Yeah, Kim, it's always a pleasure. So
Thank you.
without further ado, I know I always look forward to this. I thought the audit report was fascinating as usual. It's the Bible of the
I
district.
really appreciate that.
We have two new members on the committee now. We have Mr. This is, you know all of us, but you know Tom Harley, Sue Reed, myself, you know everybody here. Mr. Chris Adams.
Nice to
How you
meet you.
doing? Good to
I'm
meet you.
Kim.
Yeah, and this is Mr. Doug Steve. I don't know.
I feel like
Before,
we know each
yeah.
other. Yes, we've
I was
met.
on the
We've
board
met.
before.
And then you know Jim Schaefer as well. So,
Nice to meet you.
okay.
And Sally is, I believe,
Sally's
online,
here.
or she was online. And she's also a new board member, Sally McCombie.
So,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, similar to what we've done in the past, I did pass around this brief PowerPoint presentation. So everyone has a hard copy that, feel free to take notes. I do throw out a lot of the numbers as we go through that maybe aren't on the page. Feel free to take notes and, as we go, if you'd like. So just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, we're going back to June 30, 23. So we're talking about the year ended June 30, 23. So we're going back a ways here. But before we get into the numbers, I'll just point out that we issued a clean opinion on the financial statements. So we had an unmodified or a clean opinion. That's certainly good news. That's the result that we want for the audit. We had no internal control deficiencies identified this year on the audit. So that's good news as well. And as you know, we do what's called a single audit here at the district, which means in addition to looking at the numbers, we're also required to choose certain federal programs and test them for compliance with regulations, federal rules and regulations. So it goes a little bit beyond the numbers, gets into some compliance. This year we had to look at two large programs were ESSER and also nutrition. So we tested both of those for compliance this year. Clean opinion on those programs as well. So everything went well there, happy to say. So good news across the board as far as audit opinions. If you flip to the first page, and this is maybe more for the newer folks, just a reminder of the funds that we're auditing here at the district and what we're going to talk about this evening. So we've got our governmental funds, which are made up of our general fund, which we'll obviously spend some time talking about tonight. Our capital projects fund, which if you look at the audit report, the capital projects fund is just one column, but internally it's actually two funds here at the districts. It's a capital reserve fund and then like a construction fund. And we'll break those out tonight and look at those separately. And then we have a debt service fund. The debt service fund really doesn't hold any money. It's kind of a through fund. The general fund transfers money into the debt service fund, and the debt service fund makes the bond payments. So money goes in, it comes out. So there's really not a lot to talk about there. There was a debt service fund this year, though, had activity. We did have a bond issue this year that passed through as well. So, but again, it doesn't hold any money. If we go to the next page, once we get through those governmental funds, then we have what's called a proprietary fund. And proprietary funds work like a business. We charge a fee for service. So the proprietary fund that we have here at the district is our cafeteria, our food service fund. And we'll look at that a little closer tonight too. We always look at a slide on that. And then finally, we have our fiduciary fund. And fiduciary funds are just that. The district is holding money in a fiduciary capacity for somebody else. It's not our money. What we have there are student activity funds. So I really don't usually spend a lot of time on student activities. I'll just mention here that at June 30th, 23, we had about $155,000 in student activity funds. And that's junior and senior high clubs. Okay.
How much did you say again?
Pardon me, 155,000. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if we go to the first page, start to look at some numbers here. It says fund balance by fund. And so we always kind of start with our fund balance. That's always a good question. What's our fund balance? So you can see the first two columns are general fund, and then the second two are capital projects funds. So the gray bar is where we stood at June 30, 23, and the red bar is where we stood at June 30, 22. So at June 30th, 23, our general fund had a fund balance of $8,772,000. That's a nice increase over last year. In June 30, 22, we were at 8,188,000. So that increase reflects basically our profit. Our revenues exceeded our expenses in 22, 23 by about $580,000. And that feeds into our fund balance, which is great. And that's even after we transferred 1.4 million to capital reserve. And even after having done that, we still ended up to the good in our general fund of to the tune of 584,000-ish. So that's good news there. Capital projects also saw a nice increase, and we'll look at that next, talk about why. But capital projects ended June 30, 23 at 18,831,000. Last year it was 9,755,000. The big increase there, aside from us transferring money into capital reserve, was our bond issue. Our 2022 bond issue went into the construction fund. So we'll look at that on the next slide. So if we go to the next page, we'll take a look at those capital projects funds. Like I said, we'll kind of break them out here. They get combined on the report, but so you can see here on the left, we've got our capital reserve fund. So our capital reserve is more like a savings account. It's more permanent in nature. We fund it year to year for future capital improvements. So the revenue, the top line there, that 45,000, almost 46,000, that's interest. Okay, and then we did spend about 840,000 out of the reserve account in 22, 23. We brought in over 1.4 million. That's from the general fund. That 1,467,000 was a transfer from the general fund right into capital reserve. Okay, so capital reserve ended up, profiting thanks to that 672,000, which added into their fund balance. So the capital reserve account sits at almost 4.6 million at the end of 23. If we go over to capital projects fund, or maybe you could call it the construction fund, this one's a little more temporary in nature. It's in play as long as we have a construction project going on. If we had no construction, this fund would probably be zeroed and closed. So there's interest coming in, that top line, 270 grand almost in interest. We did spend 1.6 million out of the construction fund this year.
The interest is some of that that we're getting on the bonds, of course.
Yes, so the money sitting in that account, the interest earned on the money sitting in that account. And then we did bring into it the 9,776,000, which was the Series 22 bond proceeds for Eisenhower improvements. So that's why the big increase, that 8.4 million to the good. But the 14.2 million in fund balance in that construction account includes obviously the 9.7 from the 22 issue. But if you remember, we started the year with the old Series 2016 bond that was for construction, elementary construction for projects that were suspended. We've kind of been sitting on that money until now. So this construction fund has had money in it since 2016 because of those proceeds that have just kind of been there, spent out a little bit, not a whole lot, but now will be dedicated to the Eisenhower project along with the new bond issue. So that's why we have the big interest earnings in that account, because we were sitting on 5.8 million at the beginning of the year already, and then we added to it.
That's what's the silver lining of the interest rate hikes.
Absolutely. This is a good year for interest. Yeah, I'm happy to talk to districts in 22, 23 about interest because everybody saw a nice increase there. Some of the money coming out, the 840,000 coming out of capital reserve, just to give you an idea, a lot of that was spent on the East Pike roof. 442,000 of that 840 went to the East Pike roof. Another 226,000 on security cameras and equipment. So those are the types of things coming out of that 840. The 1.6 on the capital projects or construction fund, that 1.6 million, 877,000 went to Eisenhower projects. Another 773,000 went to the admin HVAC system and the East Pike office renovations. Okay, so there were some other construction besides Eisenhower going on there too. Okay. So that's a little bit about our capital funds. If you go to the next page, it has a pie chart on it. It says at the top, general fund sources of revenue. So we just kind of like take a look at our general fund and where's the money coming from into the district. So we've got our pie chart here. The biggest percentage, that big gray piece of the pie, coming from real estate taxes, over $27 million in 22, 23 coming in through real estate. State subsidies bringing in another 21.6. And then we've got local taxes, other local taxes besides real estate. That kind of burgundy piece of the pie there, 6.4 million coming in other local taxes. And when we talk about other local taxes, earned income tax, real estate transfer tax, delinquents, things like that. We've got a little bit, the green piece of the pie there, federal subsidies, 2.5 million coming in through federal subsidies and then other local sources. If you look at the bottom, I just have the numbers there. So total revenues coming in for 22-23 was 60,611,000, up from 57.2 million last year. So we've got like a 6%, 5.9% increase in revenues this year. When I took a look at that, I always like to look at, why the increase. The big increases were in that yellow piece of the pie, state subsidies. We're up about 1.9 million over last year. And that was in a number of places. The basic ed subsidy was up 970,000. Just that one was up almost $1 million. Pupil transportation subsidy was up about 300,000. Property tax reduction allocation was up about 270. There was some new money from PCCD. I'm sure you've talked about the school mental health and safety grants. That was new money this year, about 120,000. So that all fed into the increase in state subsidies. The other item that went up and kind of taps on what we were just talking about, the other local sources, that blue piece of the pie is only 5%. It's about $3 million. Other local sources, what goes into there that increased this year was interest. Okay, so interest is up about $370,000 over last year, which is nice. And then we also have insurance proceeds in that number. About 917,000 in insurance proceeds came in from the fire. So, so those were some big increases in that other local source number that pushed up revenues this year
We're
as
not
well.
required to segregate that. You don't have that segregated. You keep that right in the general fund, or no? Or do you put it in?
Well, it was all
It was transferred to capital reserve, I think. Yeah, it was part of that $1.4 million.
It was transferred to capital reserve as part of that 1.4.
I mean, it went into the general fund though, but then it ended up getting transferred to capital reserve.
Yeah, the bulk of the transfer was the insurance fund.
Okay. Okay, if we go to the next page, we'll stick with the general fund here, but now we'll look at the expenditures. So we talked about revenues, where the money's coming from. Now we'll look at where it's going to out of the general fund. So in 22-23, we've got another pie chart here. No surprise what we want to see. The biggest percentage going directly to instruction. So 64% of our expenses going to the instruction category, another 26% to instructional support services. If you go to the bottom, I've got the numbers here too. So 22-23, we expended 60,027,000. That's up from 57.3 million last year. So we had an increase in expenses as well. The revenues increased more, which is great. That's why we got a nice profit. But we did have an increase of about close to 5% in expenses. Again, I look for where. So the big increases were in instruction. The big gray piece of the pie there went up about 1.6 million. And taking a look at that, big increases in charter school tuition. That falls under other purchase services, emotional support tuition, things like that. And then other professional services, security, IU services, education services. So, and I think a lot of that's covered by ESSER funding. But at any rate, those costs did go up this year. Salary and benefits, of course, up about 400,000 in instruction as well. So, so that's where the increases were.
I just have a question for
Please.
Jared. You had put, or somewhere it's in this audit report, that we're figuring a 10% increase coming up in the health benefits for the
Probably in the
employees.
MD&A maybe.
Yeah, I'm just curious, is that something, is that a serious, I mean, I know it's a serious number, but is it just put in there as a placeholder, or do you actually think that could happen? Because it hasn't in the past few years.
I mean, it's going to be, we just had our meeting 2 weeks ago, the healthcare consortium. Our max rate, it could go down. We don't think it will, but it's going to be 9%
Okay,
increase in our in healthcare.
thank you.
Okay, so so just kind of looking at the rest of the pie chart here, another big, I mean, the support services also went up. That 15.4 million is up about 635,000. That's largely in student transportation, operation of plant and maintenance, building costs. Those were the increases there. The transfers, I'll point out, this kind of leads into the next slide. So the transfers, that green piece of the pie, 4.8 million. So that's the general fund transferring money out to other funds, right? So of that 4.8, 3.3 went to the debt service fund to make bond payments. Okay, so of that 4.8, 3.3 is debt, it's principal and interest. The other 1.4 went to the capital reserve fund, included those insurance proceeds and some other funds. Okay, so that's what went out this year, and that's up over last year. We transferred about 150,000 more for debt and about 150,000 more to the capital reserve fund this year.
We were
So-
happy to do that. Boy,
Yeah.
that was a big deal.
The capital reserve funds,
Yeah, It
absolutely.
was a big deal.
Absolutely.
It was a lot of work on.
And I feel like you've been doing that the last few years.
We have been
You've been
trying
really
to plow into
pushing
the
to like
reserve.
see where we are at the end of the year and move that money into capital reserve, which is terrific because we certainly need it for future improvement. So that's a smart move for sure. But so speaking of debt, if we go to the next slide, we'll take a look at the debt. We said, well, we moved about 3.3 million into the debt service fund. So here's what we're paying. So I show you this every year. On the left, we've got a roll forward, right? So the beginning of the year, at July 1, 22, we had outstanding debt of 26.2, almost 26.3 million. We issued new debt this year. The Series 22 bonds were 9.5. Okay, so that adds in. We made principal payments of 2.7. So we retired 2.7. So that brings us down to 33,144,000 outstanding at June 30, 23. Okay, the current portion of that, the portion we expect to pay, the principal, I mean, this is all principal on the left. The principal we expect to pay within the next year, within 23, 24, is 2,782,000. So then the rest of it's considered long-term. And I always like to point out the interest expense that we paid in 22, 23 on that debt was about $768,000 in interest. What this does not include, what this page does not include is the our share of the Indiana Tech Center debt. We have a share in that as well. That's not reflected in the financial statements, but it was about $264,000 outstanding, our share outstanding at June 30th, 23. So that's coming way down. That's coming way down. That tech center debt might be going away.
It goes away next year.
I was going to say
Next year's our last
yeah,
payment
last
on
year.
it,
So
24,
we're
25.
getting close on that. So on the right, I'm just kind of listing, just to kind of remind you of the different bond series that are in play here that make up that 33.1 million. So of course, the new one, Series 22, 9.5 million. But we're still paying 21A, 21 bless you, Series 2017 and 16. 16's coming to the end there. So, and I have noted for each one that the current expected completion date on those bonds are listed under each one when we expect it to end, depending, of course, on refundings and things coming down the line. Although this isn't
We
really
only
the year for
have
that.
one more chance at a refund on that new debt.
I would say
Or
probably
not a refund, but a refinance.
the majority of our debt that will be refinanced has been. Some of it's,
But we have an option on that one we just did, and it looks like rates could come down.
yeah, we always have options.
I
and
don't know what year that we can do that on that last one.
The 2016s we're probably not going to refinance, but the oldest, the 2017, should be coming up. And if, Jamie Doyle and PFM do a great job of kind of monitoring that, when is a good time to refinance.
You
So
got
they're-
that at a decent rate, though.
Is that a typo on the Series 17 where it says it ends September 26?
Oh, now I've
No,
made it
it's
as
just a
scheduled
10
to
year.
end
I
September
I
26th.
think that's the way.
It was a refinancing of older
Yeah,
debt
old
that
that we
Mhm.
turned over.
I believe that's probably the last of maybe the ESCO debt from 2013, 14,
I have that
or
it
2012,
refunded part of Series 2012 and 2013.
which would have been the ESCO
Is
project.
that what that was?
Yep.
Okay. And then the Series 2016 was the elementary school construction that was suspended. Those funds are largely sitting in construction account. Series 21, I have refunded Series 12, 13, and 15A. Series 21A refunded part of 2016. And then our new one is for the Eisenhower project. So, okay.
Jared, what rates are these at, or range? I remember seeing the book, but I can't recall.
Maybe look
it
at
was
the audit
decent.
report.
Our refi on that one is nice. His rates were so low.
Which on this, the one that's about ready to go away?
The Series 17, we got that. I mean, that ESCO worked out.
Let's see, I've got them here in the audit report. Let me see if I can read off a couple quick. So the 2016, the one that's down to 160 grand, we had varying interest rates ranging from 2.5 to 3%. Series 2017, we've got bearing interest at a fixed rate of 2.24. It's a good rate. The series of 21, we've got a fixed rate of 0.94%, less than 1%. How about it? That's a good one.
That's pretty good.
We'll take it. Series A of 21, I've got at 1.75. This is why we do it, folks. These are great rates. And then Series 22, the new one, is at 4%.
We borrowed that last one for fear rates would go up, so we tried to lock it, but we can
Before-
refi, yeah, but I
Yeah,
mean,
before it got worse,
try
which it
to
did get
borrow
worse.
when it's.
Mhm.
when it's
I mean, it did
nice.
get worse, so, that's.
Well, yeah,
You did get in a little early, so,
Yeah.
okay. All right, so if we go to just, we'll stay on
This is
debt
the
for one
most
more.
important page.
This one, you like this one,
coming
okay,
up.
this is a good one, okay, we'll take a look at this. So this graph, shows debt service as a percentage of total expenditures, right? So what percentage of our expenditures between the governmental fund and the capital reserve funds, so governmental funds, what percentage are we spending on debt? And you can see that big blue diamond there is us, okay, that 5.46%. So 5.46% of our total expenditures are going to debt service, or did in 22-23. And we just have, now this is just our other districts. We audit a number of local school districts. So these are our other districts on here, at least the ones that have debt. We have more districts than 17, but some of them don't have debt, or some of them just have like a share of their VOTEX debt. They don't have bonds or anything. So these are just the districts that have bond issues like you do, and other notes. So, you know, you can see we range from, Shade, less than 1% up to Richlands at like 9.7. So just depending on where everybody is with their construction projects, honestly, we've got districts that are way past construction and they're paying off their, like Shade doesn't really have a lot going on. They're at the end of their debt. They're going to be paid off here. Shanksville's low like that too. Whereas a Richland and a Wimber are up towards the top because they recently did big projects. So they're kind of at the start of their debt service. So it just depends kind of where everybody is in construction projects and where they are in the terms of their debt. But
So this is a ratio of our debt service to our total expenditures.
right. So when I say debt service, it's your principal and interest payments. So it's
Okay.
expense to expense. So principal and interest payments divided by total expense for the district.
Including what we spend for the capital
Yes,
projects.
sir. Yes, sir.
But does that
So-
include the pension? No. Teasers.
It would include our retirement expense, yes.
Yeah, within the general fund, it includes your general fund expenses, capital reserve, and construction account.
So if we're about ready to spend 10, 15, $20 million on the Eisenhower project, and if that debt service stays the same, then the percentage will drop?
If your expenses go up and your debt service payments stay the same, then that percentage will drop because you're spending more and your debt your debt service isn't changing.
Okay.
But I mean, over time, and I think ideally we try to keep our debt service consistent, right? That's why we fund it.
I think what he's saying, Kim, is like in the next year, we will probably have an extra $20 million in expense on a capital
Through
project.
construction, yeah, so
So you're gonna
that's,
expect to see that
gonna go
way
down.
out.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
I mean, historically, even in the past couple of years, this 5.46 is probably a typical number. It's been as high as 6%. It's, so it's always been between the kind of 5 and 6%
Yeah, you're kind of always between
for us.
5 and 6. It seems like you're always in the middle.
And that's where I was going was, historically, I didn't know the exact numbers, Jared, but I recognized it at that kind of general.
You're always in the same place. Yeah, kind of in the middle
Okay,
here, right? Like I always see you in the middle.
So when we spend the $20 million on the Eisenhower project over the next 12 months, and our debt service is going to remain about the same. It may go up a couple $100,000, but it's not going to go up significantly.
Then this percentage should go down.
And then that percentage
Right.
for next year should go down, which will kind of be an anomaly then, if we're tracking where we are on this over time.
Right.
Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes. Yeah, that would kind of be, it would, because typically you don't have that
Yeah.
kind of construction.
Where were we before we borrowed this extra money? Where were we? Do you have a record? Do you have an idea of where the ratio was?
It was around 6%, so.
But it's, yeah, but I would like it more precise because it's going to be shaving down.
Vice President here.
I mean, if anything, I could just look at my presentation. I don't have them all here, but I could look at my presentations for the last how many years, because we've been doing this for many years, showing this slide and show you the percentage every year.
And I did look that up. I wrote it down. I apologize. It's back in my office right now, but it's like it was 6.1, it was 6.5, it was 5 something over the past 2 or 3 years. So
Our leverage has maintained pretty stable. In other words, I don't see this district as over leveraged.
No, and actually the next point I was gonna make, so we've talked about this in the past, thanks, Kim, we see where we are compared to your other districts, we're kind of in the middle, that's all well and good, but is it a good percentage, is it a bad percentage, what does that mean? And so we've usually used, PFM provided us with a ratings chart that they use for bond rating, like for rating bonds, and it's an S&P ratings chart, like specific to local governments. And according to that chart, the benchmark is 8%. So if you're under 8%, that's deemed very good. So this chart goes very good, good, adequate, weak, very weak. Okay, so if you're under 8%, you're in that top, very good. So that's how PFM looks at it, which I would think is who we are interested, bond rating, that's who we're interested in looking at our debt. So, and we have always, I've not been at a meeting where you've not been in a very good category.
we've
You know what I
always
mean?
been-
You've always been under that 8%, so we're kind of happy with that.
What I'm curious about for future is where we would be, I know with an efficiency ratio, I don't know where if you even can calculate that in a not-for-profit.
I mean, I don't know that generally comes into play with, and that's why we use this, because there have been
So-
questions like that in the past, like, well, what's our current ratio, or what's, and you kind of get into some regular, almost like banking ratios and stuff, which I don't know that really, they don't really translate well into a school district. So that's why we've come up with this, kind of like what matters for a school district, or what makes sense for a school
Well,
district, and
certainly.
it's this type of.
Certainly what it costs to educate a pupil. I
Mhm.
mean, but you almost have to, some of these districts have different numbers of kids, students in them. So it's
Sure,
hard to figure out what
Right.
I mean, it's a hard number to get a hold of.
It is,
in
it
terms of-
is. That would be tough, I think, tough to grab. There's a lot that goes into that, and like you said, per pupil cost and that type of thing. So this is just a matter of, and even the fact that we're considering, what to your point, we're including construction costs. So we've got districts here that don't have much going on. They don't have a lot of construction costs. We have other districts that have a lot of construction going on right now. So their percentages could be sort of anomalies like that too, but we're taking all that into account, and doing it as a percentage of all the government. And I think the reason we use governmental funds as opposed to just the general fund is because so many of our districts don't have a capital reserve fund. Their capital costs come out of their general fund.
You're allowed to do that?
Absolutely. So
So the board elects to,
yes. So we have a number of districts that their general fund has everything in it, including their capital costs. So it's not, we kind of need to pick it all up to make
they're
it a fair
smaller than
comparison.
we are, correct? They would be smaller.
Mhm.
I can see that they're
Yeah.
smaller than others.
One of the, in the supplemental comparative information that I give you, the first page shows our districts and their capital reserve fund balances. And some districts don't have a capital reserve at all, and you'll see that. So that's because that's a question that's come up in the past. Well, how many of your districts have a capital reserve fund? And so that's what we started adding to the supplemental information, and you can see, Blacklick doesn't have one. Conemaugh Valley doesn't. Rockwood doesn't. Ferndale. And some have very low balances. Some have a very low balance because, again, they're spending most out of their general fund. So when we first started doing this ratio, we were just looking at the general fund and going, I don't know if that's really fair, because a lot of our districts have all their capital costs in the general fund, and a lot of our districts don't. So we just started using governmental funds that we're picking up capital costs everywhere. Okay. So that's the debt. And then if we go to the next slide, we'll take a quick look. How did we do compared to budget? So this is again just our general fund. So how did we do compared to budget for 22-23? So the first two columns are our revenues. The gray column is the budget. We budgeted to bring in 57.9 million. We actually brought in 60.6. So we did better than budget. We brought in more, 2.6 million more than what we budgeted in revenues. Expenditures also had a positive variance. On the expenditure side, we budgeted to spend 61,368,000. We actually spent 60,027,000. So we underspent our budget by over 1.3 million. So taking a look at that, I mean, the expenditures, really all categories were underspent. I mean, they're the larger categories, regular instruction, special ed, but I mean, all of our categories, we came in under. On the revenue side, where did we bring in more money? It was mostly in local funds. We brought in more than anticipated there by about 1.3 million, but even our state funding was more than anticipated. I don't know that those insurance proceeds were budgeted, so that probably helped, right?
I don't believe they
I don't
were.
know that they were, that threw our local up.
I think the big piece, and you kind of hinted on it earlier, was the state subsidies, which
State came in a lot high, like
we
state
didn't,
subsidies.
when we passed our budget, we didn't know what they were, so we budgeted for a very, if any, increase at all.
Right.
2023 so far away at this point.
Right.
But we typically, if we do, there is not a state budget and we don't know that amount, we are very conservative on what we put in the budget for increase if we increase that at all. So
Mhm. And then like
And we got
basic ed alone came in,
Yes.
what, 900 grand higher than the prior year. I mean, so it's hard to budget those things because you're budgeting earlier than you.
And interest revenue was a big part of that. as
Sure.
well.
You know, yeah, and then we project out these big deficits, but, you know, it irons out.
Yeah.
Or he does his magic.
Jared, what was the reason that we did so well on the expense side?
Like Kim said, I think it was a little mixture of both. It was salary, it was benefits, or that is almost 75% of our budget alone. So I think we did originally last year healthcare. When I budget for healthcare, every new employee I budget as though they're coming in with family healthcare, and that is not always the case when we hire new teachers, new support staff, those type of things.
We also had 17 more new staff that year. So probably saw it.
Yeah, I think we had
That's true.
a couple positions that just didn't end up getting filled. We see kind of savings when we have, a teacher goes on a long-term leave and they're not getting paid, and their substitute, who, is probably further down the salary schedule. We usually see some savings there.
Okay.
But it was all, it's a mixture of a lot of things too.
We had a presentation last, I mean, we were looking at different ways to invest the balance, the funds, the balance sheet. But, there's been a shift, and that's enabled us to increase these reserves as well. We've maintained, a good shop all the way, so,
Yeah.
it's-
That's great that you guys are doing that, because that's like, when you look at the excess and the reserves that you guys are funding, that's like a really good sign of, from a health standpoint.
Right, that you're able to fund
Very well
your
managed.
capital reserve, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So there's a lot of thought and planning that goes into that, absolutely. So if we go to the next page, we'll get off of the general fund for a sec, we'll take a quick look at food service. So our cafeteria fund, how did we do this year? So the first column's 22-23, and then compared to 21-22. So revenues coming in 22-23, 1,997,000. We spent out 1.6. So we're still left with a nice profit here. Our revenues exceeded our expenditures in food service by 351,000. And that's great. Last year was a little higher. Last year the profit was more like 400,000. But the difference, and you can see, revenues are up about 108 grand, expenses are up about 157. But really what you don't see, the big difference there is, so last year, the revenues, that 1,888,000, so that broke down into sales of only about 193,000, and then government funding of 1.7, because if you remember in 21-22, all the students were free. Okay, so it was government funding and less in the way of sales. So what were sales? Sales were adult meal sales and a la carte or whatever. So not much in the way of sales, but a lot of government funding, right? So this year it's kind of going the other way. So our sales, because now 22-23, we're back to free, reduced, and paid. Okay, so in 22-23, that 1,997,000 in revenue, the sales part of that is 557,000. So last year 193, this year 557. The government funding is 1.4. Last year 1.7, this year 1.4. So sales are up and government funding's down. But I mean that makes sense because we're back to students paying. So
Is breakfast still free?
Breakfast is
breakfast
still
still
free.
is free, right.
And I expect that to
During
continue.
Yeah.
Mhm. We have a lot of districts going that direction with the CEP, with the free breakfast. So, so still a healthy profit on our food service, which we've been seeing at all of our districts the last few years, and the government funding has certainly helped post-pandemic to boost food service, P&Ls. So we're left with a fund balance or a net position in our food service fund of 1,004,393, up from almost 653,000 last year. So food service certainly looking healthy too.
And and we've had these conversations at Buildings and Grounds and maybe Audit and Finance, but you will see, I don't know if it'll be in the 23-24 current school year or the following school year, depending on when we pay for it, but you will see a significant decrease in the net position. I don't want to say a loss, but we are planning on paying for the new food service equipment for Eisenhower out of this fund, which is a very nice option.
That's
we have this
terrific.
money
We can
sitting
do it.
here.
Absolutely.
PD is kind of, they flag us every year when I submit my report because we are over what they think is a good balance in your food service program, because it's really supposed to be a break-even program. So I have told them every year we're working on an Eisenhower project and we are going to pay for that equipment out of here. So you will probably see $600,000 decrease in that net position when we pay for that equipment. But it's a good thing for the district.
It's also, we're charging mandated minimums for our food, as I recall. So it's not like we could cut our food costs or charge in half.
Right.
So I remember when they made us raise the prices a few years ago.
Yeah, they do. And they would love to see us raise prices more, our paid lunch prices more than we have. And my argument always is like, how can we do that? And then you're, on the other hand, saying we have too much of a profit. And that's good. I mean, that's a good thing that we're able to keep our prices down. And so we just have very good participation. Our food service director does an excellent job of
Producing some quality meals.
Yes.
The kids are buying the meals, the whole meals.
breakfast participation has been through the roof this year. Even it was kind of going that direction even before it was announced paid, but that has helped as well.
And we've done it with free and reduced lunch going on.
Yeah.
Every shift.
It's been a remarkable partnership with our food service people.
But again, you will see a hit to that $1 million, but in my mind, that's a good thing that it can help fund the project as well that we're going through. So, and it does typically in a normal year, if an oven breaks or something happens in any of the other buildings, we are now able to charge it to food service, where before the general fund was buying it because years ago, food service was operating at a typical loss. We were digging ourselves out of a hole, and we have done that, and we are now able to buy all equipment from it. So,
I think probably about half of that sales that you have from this year. We have 6 kids, so I'm constantly. I think I put about half of that.
Thank you for your efforts towards the.
I can 10%.
You could add our family to the budget.
We'll do that. You will get an honorable mention next year.
Thank you.
You got it. Okay, all right. But that's all I have for kind of, I know just a quick rundown of the financials for 22-23 and the audit, but everything went well, and that is a big thank you to Nicole and Jared and the whole business office staff. And I tell you this every year, that you've got a terrific staff in your business office, and they are very well prepared for the audit every year, and they make it go as smoothly as possible for us, and we appreciate that. So thank you.
Fantastic work, Jared and Nicole.
Absolutely.
That's really impressive.
Absolutely.
So we had a good year.
Absolutely. Take those good years.
Kim, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
It's good seeing you.
All right, you too.
Take care.
All right, thanks a lot. We'll see you guys.
There.
Okay. Next on our agenda is the discussion about the foundation, and we have a Miss Katrina Poposky on up to the table. She is from the Community Foundation of the Alleghenies. I'll have Jared introduce her a little bit more thoroughly, but I'm so pleased you could be here because we're getting more and more serious about, you heard our audit report about alternative streams of revenue that we could partner with the foundation proceeds to try to improve our, thank you. There you go. So one of the things, we've met with the Greater Latrobe Foundation. Now, they've done it differently. So we kind of have you here to get a contrast. A couple of months ago, we sat down with Jessica Gold. And it's interesting. They do it on their own 501c3 or whatever, and have done very well with it. She gave us all kinds of ideas that she had and how they set it up in the agreement between the school district and the foundation. But it is an issue with us going through you all. Is that still the most sensible option for us with your foundation?
I think it can be done with a little more ease and a little less administrative burden on you. And things change. I was on a call with the head of Central Cambria's foundation this morning, and their treasurer retired. The next one moved out of town. They can't find anyone to serve as the treasurer for their school district foundation. So they're considering moving everything to us as well, manage a few scholarships for them now. So the great thing is, now first of all, does everyone know about the community foundation? Do I need
Love to hear it.
Give us some background.
Yeah.
Sure. So we've been around since 1990. We started just serving Johnstown. And it was really created by some business people who saw, the steel companies closing, all of this big money leaving town, and they wanted to build a vehicle where the people who live in our community can support our community. So we've expanded over the years to cover 4 counties, Cambria, Bedford, Somerset, Indiana. I know we don't necessarily have the name recognition in Indiana County that we do in some of the other ones. We just did a new 5-year strategic plan, and some of our goals within that plan, we have a county director in Bedford and Cambria. We're planning to create one in the upcoming years in Indiana to help solve that problem. So we help people give charitably. We have a bunch of different kinds of funds people can start, and we help people of all kinds. Obviously, we do the traditional foundation work where we work with people of means who start funds, and then they figure out what nonprofits they want to give grants to or scholarships for students. But we work with organizations a lot. We have probably about 23 school district umbrella funds right now in all 4 counties. So you do have a fund already. It's a smaller one. And what makes the fund helpful is that the community foundation staff kind of work as your administrative and accountant/treasurer. So contributions are sent to us. We're doing all the receipting. And we give letters weekly. So your donors are going to get quick and thorough acknowledgments for their gifts. The money in our fund, is considered a foundation asset. It's for the specific purposes of the district, but it's reported on the foundation's 990 and in our audit. So the school district, your group, has no legal reporting responsibilities for that funding. And then the fund is really created to solve the problems that the district has. For instance, the combat bots have started approaching some business donors for some contributions, and they had a few people who wanted a tax acknowledgement letter. So Jared had them send the checks to us. We started a little sub-fund to the school district's main fund just for that program. So now that program has an easy way to solicit donations. Once I got the paperwork signed today, once we get it up and open, it'll have a URL on our website where that teacher or parents can share that link for online donations on Facebook or in emails. And so we see that a lot when we work with districts. Sometimes they start one fund for general purposes or a specific campaign, and then they have someone approach them that wants to start, a permanent endowed scholarship, or they decide they want to start a new program in the district. We have Myersdale runs a backpack program through a fund at the foundation. They have a student support fund where they raise money so they can do things like buy kids gym shoes that don't have them, or a set of pants and underwear if a kid has an accident, those kinds of things. So when I talk with groups like this, there's usually one person who's frowning at me and thinks I'm trying to sell them something, but I'm really not. I see us as a partner and a problem solver for you. Being in these chairs, doing the work you do, it's a lot of effort already on your part. If you'd like to send thank you letters and do additional reporting with the IRS, I won't stop you if that's really what you want to do. I'm not paid on commission, but I see a lot of districts be really happy with the fund and what we're able to help them do. And then we also, Jared and Rob said that you guys really want to do some big fundraising. I've done a ton of it. I worked at that foundation for 9 years. I've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars with our various fund holders. And so I can help you craft a campaign that can get results. I've done a lot of training. I can help you with your materials. We have custom online fundraising options if that's something that you'd want to take advantage of.
What do you mean by that? Custom fundraising?
Well, when you open the fund, we have a standard link on our website. It's a donation form that syncs with our operational software. So it's pretty plain Jane. It has the foundation's logo, the name of the fund, and it's all white. The form has some options. You can make gifts in memory of someone, in honor of someone. But there's really not a lot to tell about your fund or the project you're working on. We have a subscription to a service called Classy. They're one of the biggest nonprofit fundraisers on the internet. And through that, we can build dynamic custom pages. You can have, you can pick the color scheme, embed a video, have pictures, do different levels. You can have, there's an event page if you were going to have a 5K or something like that. So there's a crowdfunding page, an event template, and then there's even a peer-to-peer team fundraising page, which Rob might know, the American Cancer Society uses, where you encourage your friends. That's what Walk of Hope uses. And so if you want to use those pages, you just fill out a form. Our staff builds them for you, and then gives you the link when it's done. So that's another.
Do many people do the crowd fundraising? What do you call it? The crowdfunding?
It depends. It depends on what you're raising money for. If you're just doing general money, the regular donation link is fine. But if you're doing something specific, yeah, they do. Especially if you want to have like different levels, or if you want to have sponsor opportunities within a building project or something like that.
So one of the things that in fundraising that in my experience, is a lot of it is as good as your email listing. So, or your contact list, I should say. Something that we've talked about, I know Tom and I've talked about it, is we do class reunions regularly, or we don't do them, but kind of two-pronged question. How do you organize around that to help classes to give? They all want to give, we don't ask them. And what do they give to? The other thing is, the other problem that we have on the other side of that is alums and everybody else are using our logo, or our name, I should say, not our logo so much, and raising money, boosters, whatever, other groups. We don't see any of that. So we're trying to sort of figure out how to attack two problems, but starting with classes in particular.
So if you have classes that want to give but aren't doing anything yet, I would be strategic about it. Like Johnstown High School, we probably have like over a dozen class of scholarships. Some of them are small, some of them give out $200. Some give out $1,000. But imagine if they could have coordinated with those people and said, it's our district scholarship fund, and why don't everybody give to this? And then you could do some really substantial things.
Okay.
And
you put it up on your page.
Yeah.
And we can interface that onto our website.
Yeah, and we could do materials where if somebody's doing a reunion, you send them a little, a packet or a flyer that says, here's what we're doing, consider. They can make the gifts in honor of people. I know those are really popular with alumni gifts, or in memory of people. And that's what I would do if I had a fresh thing to start with. If not, you can have those different smaller scholarships. If the class of 79 really wants to do their own thing, they certainly could, but I think you'd be better off being strategic about it.
I just went to my 50th reunion, and
Jeez.
hard to believe. And the school had somebody come and talk to us, tell us what was going on in the school. But at the end of the presentation, they gave us the option of having a class scholarship, and they raised $10,000.
That's great.
One one meeting. And you look at it, there was, 100 and some people there.
Some-
It was a surprisingly, little, small lift to get to $10,000 scholarship.
Man,
That's
I'm
not
proud of you all.
Oh, really old.
I was an English major, I didn't do the math.
50
Because
plus
for
18.
people of a certain age, like if they
He's
had.
39.
You're at 18 to 50 and you're at 68.
Okay, you're not quite there. But if you were a few years older, what I see is IRA contributions.
Yeah, right.
We get so many gifts from older people direct
Right.
from their IRA because we are a qualified charity for that. We manage that. We get people call us all the time because they say, we know the community foundation is going to give us a receipt. And
Well, no, that's
quickly.
huge. I recall.
Yeah, and we see a lot come through for our older friends.
I kind of a vision that I would have is that we've had two terrific projects under Walter's leadership that he's encouraged this whole board to think about more seriously. One of them is an outdoor classroom
That's cool.
at Benjamin Franklin School. Terrific, just terrific. We'd like to do it all over the district. The other one, we raised a lot of money. What was it, Jerry? About 88,000 or more. It's still coming in.
For the East Pike, it's probably close to 100,000. For Ben Franklin, it was probably 80-some thousand.
For a special playground here at this school. We see our basketball boosters, our football boosters raising a lot of different money for their needs. And our athletic budget, the idea is not to let it burgeon so much, try to keep it stabilized because as you can see, there's a lot of things we want to do.
Well, we used the community for the Alleghenies for the original turf project back in 2009.
I
We
saw
raised,
that there were a lot of
yeah,
flow through there.
it was just a 3 month, it was in 3 months. We, myself, Mark Zelinskis and Bill Gaddy and Tony Kuznetsky raised $340,000. But it was just enough that came in and basically went out for the project itself.
Yeah.
Because you guys charge a 1% fee.
Yeah, you have,
Is that what you're still charging?
well, you have an endowed fund. We usually don't mix pass-through gifts and endowed money anymore, which is why we did the new fund for the combat ops. But yeah, for a traditional invested endowed fund, that's 0.9%. And then there's an investment fee of about 0.6
Okay.
that our advisors charge.
Okay.
About 1.5%
So
total
a little over 1%.
fees. Okay.
So it hasn't gone up too much. Not too much.
No, we don't really change our administrative fee. And actually, when we RFP'd for our investment advisor, we ended up choosing the same firm and they reduced our fee.
Well, we as a district, that's great. We as a
Yeah, it doesn't
district
happen often, right?
have been asked to contribute, for instance, to the playground. And we're an investor in that.
Mhm.
All right. Now that's a group of people that have gone out and raised this money. Just terrific. I mean, the young woman who's headed it up has just been outstanding.
Oh, Julie is one of the big folks that did it, is sitting right beside you too, with Tara.
How's that?
She
I'll
was-
take that credit.
She's our star.
Yeah,
She's our star. She's our
she did a great job with it.
So the idea would be looking for ways in which we can incorporate, we're asked to invest, but can we actually all try to invest together instead of having
Sure.
outside groups running it and we don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, and bad things happen. Like I just talked to the band boosters in the district I live in, North Stars. A great volunteer drained their entire account in 4 months by just like going to Starbucks and the mall and stuff like that. Yeah,
It's expensive.
Wow.
And I know that United School District had a theft. Conway Township band boosters also. I don't know what it is with the band boosters lately, but there's been a lot of that coming up. And it's unfortunate. One of the things that some of the schools we work with is they require booster clubs to have a sub account. And
Have a what account?
a sub account. So it would be a fund where their volunteers can have access and can still, make the distributions, but the district would have oversight of it. It would see what's going in. And then we also have, we're not giving volunteers debit cards so they could use them at Starbucks. We have a pretty stringent policy to distribute money from a fund. So we either have to pay an invoice or reimburse with receipts. We don't just issue checks. So it can help that if that's something, because, you know, you hate to think about the bad actors, but unfortunately they always pop up, right?
Do you like to see a foundation board on this side to work interface with you all, or is it just would it operate out of this board? I mean, how does that?
That's up to you. Technically speaking, the Community Foundations Board approves everything that happens with all the funds under our umbrella. But you can organize on your end however you'd like. If you want this full group, if you want a subcommittee, that's entirely up to you. I suggest you fill it with people who aren't afraid to ask for money. And maybe have some people aren't.
No, he's good at it.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, I think most of the things people will give money if it's a specific. If it's just something general, just to give to a foundation for alum, they're not going to give. I think if you have a specific project, then you can hit certain alum or different sectors of alumni and go after those people.
Yeah, I think that is true sometimes, especially like if it's a stadium and they can have their name on it or something like that, or a plaque. But I think generally speaking, it's a different kind of ask. You have to be smart about it, you know? But even when you're asking for something that's general, it's helpful to tell, you know, they say fundraising is emotion first. There's like a lot of people consider themselves charitable, but they might not know what they give to. They might even have a budget, they know, you know, for the year, but often they don't give until something breaks that stream of consciousness, right? They see it on the news, they get something great in their mailbox. But when you tell the story, what really breaks that consciousness is like drilling down to one kid. I did this amazing webinar with the development guy for Doctors Without Borders, and all their materials are about one person, even though their impact is enormous. So you can fundraise for a general fund for the district by telling the story of the kid in second grade who's getting free breakfast and now can pass his math test or whatever. And I can help you with that.
And this is your donor list. I'll take it in here. Oh, these are all.
That's
that
not
you
in
got.
memory of and in honor of. Our donor list is too big to put in the annual report, but it is online. We had over 7,000 donors last year.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, and it's because, you know, aside from the traditional endowment work we do a lot of community grassroots funds. So the same thing as you, they start a fund because they don't have their own nonprofit status. And then their volunteers are doing the work, raising the money, and amazing things. You know, Rob was involved with the Walk of Hope I mentioned. They started because the Cancer Society canceled the Relay for Life in Johnstown because they said the $35,000 in May wasn't enough to keep the race going. So they started from with us, kept the event, tweaked it a little bit with the same kind of feel. Last year they raised $96,000. And now all the money stays local and goes directly for cancer patients in need. The hospitals refer patients. It's incredible work. I mean, and it's all done through volunteers. One amazing volunteer primarily. She's dynamo.
So Katrina, I get it that there are a lot of alumni here that if they knew of this or if they knew that we were seeking funds for this, might open their wallets to help. Part of the issue is, you know, trying to figure out how to get to those people.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's from a class reunion or some other marketing, you're really talking about marketing here more than anything else. But do you guys provide some help or assistance in reaching out to some of those alumni or some of those groups that might become donors or get the word to the people that, whether
Assistance
it's in,
technically, or like
Do you have
kind of
lists?
ask.
Can we buy lists for you?
I'm sorry, what was that, Julia?
Can you buy a list?
I
mean, you have quite a list in here, just, in
Yeah,
other words,
our
we're not
policy
good
is
at
that we can only provide the donor list for your fund.
okay.
But if you have active reunions that are happening, you can build a process there and harness that if you're gonna be communicating with them.
And I guess that's kind of where I'm going is, do you provide that kind of help or support, like a brochure for the Indiana district, or
Yeah, we can help with that.
doing some of the building that process on how you actually, the most successful way to contact, or not so much contact, but approach because sometimes, you go to a sales pitch, something like Tom said, he goes there and they tell you all the great things about then they want to pass the hat. Well, some people are excited about it and will open up, but others are going to go, the door. Okay. So approach may be the key to this. So how do you,
And social media resources.
So I think when you're fundraising, it's a lot of different communication strategies. And you start with what you have and you work with what you have and you try to build on it when you can. So do you have any current lists, or working with the reunions that you know are happening, creating a way for them for you to get their information? So if it's putting together a piece and saying, oh, are you interested in giving? We have this fund, we'd love to. If you don't have an email client, like a MailChimp or something, we can help you, we can send them out. I worked with a group, they're called the Wimber Rambler Letterman's Club. Just some guys who played sports and lettered when they were in high school and they loved their district. 20 years ago, they started a scholarship fund. A couple years ago, they decided their fund was about $80,000, and they wanted to increase the amount of scholarships, and they also wanted to help support the sports programs. They saw that the district has limited resources. It's been changing a little bit economically, so they wanted to be able to give the district money for every single high school sports program. They had a decent list, a mailing list, but they went and hustled. They identified people from different classes. They're like, go bother the people you talk to, get their mailing address. We kept a shared Google sheet where they would add things. Actually, they asked me because they weren't super savvy with it at first, and I did. And then we sent out 4 MailChimps a year to their email list. And we can target it within our MailChimp. It can be branded with, your logo, colors, whatever. It can even look like it's coming from someone year's name they would recognize. And then they just built the list however they could, and they ended up, they really worked at it, and that's how you have to do it. They wanted to raise that $80,000 in 2 years. They did it in 11 months.
Nice. Okay.
well,
Rob, would that be, do you think there's a school club or something that we could tap to help us build those alumni databases?
Maybe, there's gotta be resources within the school. My thought originally was we were gonna build a board, a separate board of this board that was going to do that legwork. Because there's, the amount of work that goes into that is substantial. There's places that hire full staffs to do that, like Latrobe has the director and a staff that work for her to just do this kind of work. So we were actually looking to schedule this meeting in the very early February after this meeting to get those people in the room, talk about creating bylaws for their operations, and then started to hit the ground running. So there's got to be the yearbook club, at the very least, the yearbook people should be able to give us names, how to hunt down their addresses though.
Nice thing is with social media nowadays, you
There's
can
gotta
track
be a
down
way,
about everyone, right?
Well, most times too, there's a lot of classes when they have their class reunion, touch base with the high school office to try to get tours of the building.
Correct.
And that would be the, I mean, other than that,
That's what it
because
is, right.
they don't go through the schools to have a reunion. So until you contact people from the various classes.
In fact, we should probably be inviting people to come in and get tours.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
like,
could do like an all-class
Hey, you having your
or
reunion.
an all-class football game or something
Yeah,
like
some
that
sort of-
too.
But
Get the men.
usually one or two games during the fall, there's a class reunion that goes, they come to the football game that night as part of their class reunion weekend.
And I think with the magic of Google and everything now, there are probably links and stuff that we can send out that start to collect, hey, click on this link and enter if you're an alumni of Indiana,
Yeah.
submit your information, your address, your phone number, or email that we can start working to push
There's
that.
also that book that came out about, 5 years ago, alumni could fill out, and it contacted alumni of the school district. And, I mean, it goes back as far back as alumni would give the information.
Where do we get a copy? Is that online or is it like an actual?
I have to see if I sell mine. You had to buy it. I mean, like the alumni that put into, you had to buy it, but I bet you there was probably 500.
I have a hardcover book with that information from my high school.
But there was someone did one that got in touch of like all past years of Indiana high school
Yeah.
through the years, and you could put your information on.
For this particular high school.
I also
Yes.
think that
Oh,
if
wow.
we reach out,
We get a hold of that. Yeah.
if we reach out to these reunion committees and offer the tour and offer some things, that getting and helping them build their
So I think,
contact list. would be really-
like, we've gone down, in the weeds, apart farther from what she's actually here for. I had a couple questions as far as like organizationally.
Go ahead.
So is there a limit to the number of sub-funds that can be incorporated? Because,
Somerset School District, we do like alphabets we do number for the fund, alphabet, and they're on W, I think.
okay.
Because they have so many different scholarships.
It was very interesting when you mentioned about the sports, because right now it's kind of the Wild West. Every booster organization has their own fundraising efforts, and if we could, centralize that and make a sub-fund, not only is there oversight, so the chances of any kind of corruption or anything's gone. It would centralize it to a place where you could almost piggyback donations. So if you do have somebody, like you said, if they have a goal, if I'm going to donate to the soccer boosters, I want that money to go to them, then they can do that. Or they can just donate to a general athletic fund that would go to, equipment improvement and throughout the district. So that was my first question. The other question is, for each sub-fund that would get set up, how is that, I guess at the level of the Community Foundation for the Alleghenies, like how is that disbursement? Like you said, they're not giving out a debit card to each individual person. Does there have to be a specific designation for disbursement purposes for each sub-fund, or is it?
Each fund is set up for a specific purpose.
Okay.
So if it would be for the football boosters and someone would try to say, well, I have to go to Jamaica for this conference, we're gonna be like, this doesn't seem like
Right.
Indiana football related. But
So I guess my question is ultimately, is that, like, if we set up a board, would we be in charge of that, or is,
we just do fund representatives.
okay,
So you wouldn't need the whole board. That gets too cumbersome to have like 8 people sign off on
Right.
something. But typically what we would do, we have Rob and Jared on everything. They get quarterly statements on everything. And then you would have like whoever is related to the program that the fund is supporting. So if it's the football coach or the head of the
Designated.
boosters or whatever. And then like Rob doesn't have to approve every single distribution because our staff is verifying that it's appropriate, and that we're getting the right documentation. So it would just be those people who are actually doing the work for that specific program that we would primarily communicate with, unless the district would want.
For instance, we have there's a Mark Hess Scholarship Fund. that was created. It's under the district's umbrella within the foundation, but really the family makes the decision as to, people apply. We kind of work with our guidance office at the high school to give kids the information, but ultimately Mark Hess's family makes the decision as to who that money goes to.
Yeah, I just worked with Charlie Mangus and I saw he just died.
Yeah. And then we have a couple
He was a
different
nice guy.
scholarship
Yeah, nice
funds,
guy.
again, under the district umbrella, but there are other people who make those decisions based on who set it up, where they wanted the money to go, those type of things.
And when we did the football turf project, it was a football coach and one of the fundraising people, community members that had the approval. They had to give a receipt, but they're the ones, no one else in the district. It was just those two individuals.
So I guess it's per sub-fund.
Yeah,
It's set up how, at the time it's set
yeah,
up.
whatever.
But there could also be the general kind of account for the district where if we have a smaller board could make the decisions as to where that those funds go.
I think that's key to get that right.
Yeah,
What's
I mean,
the rate? Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry.
No,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was
You
going to
were
say
gonna
that's kind of exactly how we would like to see it.
Yeah.
There's sub funds, but there's also a general fund set up for the bigger type of things. It would hopefully be the bigger account. But the committee itself would be more in charge of the general fund and possibly some other sub funds if there comes a need. But I wouldn't want to discourage families, individuals from setting up their own accounts with under our umbrella as well.
Our umbrella.
I don't know if you're
Anything
in a
else?
position to talk about the rate of return and how you guys structure that.
So, we use a professional asset advisor. They're Cornerstone Asset Advisors. They're in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. They work with a lot of institutional clients. St. Francis University's endowments also managed by them. And what they're really looking for, their sweet spot is 6.5% to 7%, right? Our spending policy on an endowed fund is 4.5%. So if they're hitting those numbers, our endowed funds are distributing the grants or the scholarships. They're covering the administrative fee, and then there's some left over, and that helps build the fund up. So in the years that aren't as optimal, there's a little cushion there to weather the storm. I do have a historical report that I can pass along. I'm not sure if that was included in this. No, but I did include this, which I don't usually bring to meetings like this. This is actually for wealth advisors, which Aaron and Rob said that some of you would have questions. And they also said that that you're interested in keeping money in Indiana. So Cornerstone manages our core portfolio. It's about 2/3 of our invested money. Cornerstone. We allow for auxiliary advisors though. So if a donor comes to us, they have an existing relationship with a wealth advisor and they want to donate a large enough amount, they can maintain that relationship. So if you wanted S&T to manage your fund, you could. S&T already manages several $1 million for us. If there's someone else, we actually have money in banks all over.
You might want to mention something.
First comment.
First Commonwealth's better.
We love everyone. But yeah, so if something like that is important to you, we have a vehicle already in place to do so. If that's not important to you, then Cornerstone, they work within an investment policy that's created by our board, and we have a local committee as well. So they have limits, they have asset allocations. I think, no more than right now, I think it's 72% in equities. And we're not risky investors. We're, slow and steady wins the race because we're in the business of forever. They report to us on a quarterly basis, and they bring a book that's 100 pages. I could share it with you if you're interested.
Well, they're a
We're very-
well-respected company. I mean, they've always
Yeah, we're
Never
very
get in trouble.
open and transparent about that. Most people don't want to get nerdy on the numbers, and the more I learn, the more I know I have a lot to learn. But yeah, I can forward some
If you would,
additional
please.
information on, yeah.
We have to, anybody, one more question we can take, we have to get through another point on the agenda and start the meeting, so, anybody have anything else, Walter? Do you have
No.
anything to- okay.
Well, if anything else comes up, any of you are welcome to contact me. My card's
Thank you.
in there.
I really
And-
appreciate you coming out on such a
Yeah,
cold night.
thank
driving
you.
the whole day.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
I
appreciate
live in
it very much.
Somerset County.
So, we have a couple of people here from Somerset County, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good luck, whatever you
Jared,
decide
you
to
wanna
do
say
next.
anything?
I hope you're successful with it. Seems like you're doing really great things.
Katrina, thank you very much.
Jared, let's move on. We've got a few minutes to finish up on the size of
Yeah, the last item we have on there is
And
just an
then-
update on the Eisenhower project, the projected cost, the funding for it, and there is, behind the audit and finance agenda that was on your seat, there's also this handout I gave you. Most of these numbers, the board has seen before, but what it is just on the left-hand side is the projected cost for the project. I've been kind of updating those as we've been getting different information back, kitchen equipment information. I'm working with a furniture provider, Rob and I are, to kind of start to narrow down that number and prepare to kind of place those orders. Certainly we'll bring that information back to the Buildings and Grounds Committee before any orders are placed. But that 26,457 is kind of a number that around the number that we've been looking at as far as the cost for the project. And again, we will continue to refine that as we get final costs in. On the right-hand side, I kind of wanted to summarize for the board and the committee as to how we've been funding the project. You can see the 3 different bond issues that we currently have that have been already in place. The 2016s was left over from the proposed Ben Franklin project. The 2022 and 23 were bond issues specifically for this project. And at this point, I'm estimating right around $24.4 million in borrowing so far for this project. Other financing uses, interest on bonds, I'm estimating probably, and I'm trying to be conservative with it, is we will probably earn around $1.2 million in interest. And that has been over a couple years, 2022, 2023, and now going into the future. The majority of the bond proceeds at this point are invested in such a way that over the next year, they will come due at varying times as I think we need the funds. So that 1.2 is a pretty set number because Pliget and they're locked in fixed investments. We know the rate, we know what they're going to earn. The one variable is when the money is liquid, sitting at Pliget, what it earns on a monthly basis, how fast we're going to draw down that liquid funds. And again, I tried to be conservative, so I'm hoping that 1.2 million, when we're sitting here next year at this time and the project's pretty much over and we're finishing paying, I hope that 1.2 is a little bit higher. The Eisenhower insurance claim, that is a number that we don't know as well. That's an estimate too.
But you need to start taking big draws in September, is that correct? Did I hear you?
Well, we're already what I consider big draws. We're already next month's board run is going to be pretty high because we've started to get some pretty big construction bills already from mainly the general contractor as well as the plumbers have really been in, or the mechanical company has been in there a good bit. So we're getting some big bills now that will be paid in February. But we just had $3.8 million investment within the 2022 funds matured. So we have the money sitting in a Pliget waiting to be pulled down on. So it's been working out very well so far. And even when it is sitting there liquid, it is earning over 5%. So it's earning a very good interest rate just sitting there
So we want rates to stay up.
at Pliget.
Raise the rates.
So we should add in the right-hand column that roughly $1 million from the cafeteria fund, because you have the kitchen equipment on the left side.
Yep, I already wrote that down there. It'll be this, we'll only be able to buy the equipment. So the 650, which is an estimate that I have right now. The kitchen equipment is currently out to bid because it is the food service fund is a lot of federal funds. We can't just go to state contract and pull that down. We actually have to bid it out because it's federal funds. So that is in the process right now.
No, but Jared, I think his point is that you've accounted for it on the left side.
Absolutely, and
Yeah, but
I already wrote it down that I did not.
Okay,
I need to add that
okay.
over there. So those total funds available will go up by another $650,000. My point in providing this to you, especially now, is the hope that at this point, it doesn't look like we may necessarily have to do another bond issue for the project. Like we were originally thinking there may be a small closeout bond issue just to kind of get us over the final hump. If these numbers even come in close at this point, we almost have a couple $100,000. When we add that $650,000 in, we almost have $1 million kind of variance. And that is with a 5% contingency fund that we're going to use some, there's no doubt. We're going to have, I mean, knock on wood, we wouldn't, but we're going to have some change orders coming in the future that may use some of that contingency fund. But my hope is we're sitting here next year not having to worry about doing another closeout bond issue for the Eisenhower project. So,
Jared, what's the amount, what's the number that's actually in the capital reserve account?
that number is probably over 4 million. We could pull from that too if we needed a little bit of funds.
That number that's 4.5 million on this that's actually what we have to work with. So we share anything.
Yeah, part of that's the bond proceeds. So the 1 point, the 900,000.
But none of that 4 million is in this number.
No, I was trying to. I mean,
Okay.
if we are able to, we can pull some of that. If not, we can leave it there for future capital projects. But
we have some money to do some of the reserve projects.
We have to,
but
yeah.
not-
I mean, we've been disciplined for the new members. We've been disciplined about making sure we keep up with the funding.
Yeah.
Is there any update on the electrical panel that?
we have a meeting tomorrow. I was going to try and get that, but as of our last meeting, it was still January of 2025. So.
Anything else to ask, Jared? We've got 3 minutes for the good of the order. Anything else you want to add? Any questions? Thank you very much. We're adjourned.